I have some leftover cherry wood, and being a wood hoarder, I can't throw it in the trash. I really want to put it on a wood shelf for 3 to 19 years, but I am trying to be better and not hoard, so let's make some quick and easy cutting boards. Well, I rode the struggle bus at times and set myself up for failure thinking this was a quick and easy project. You will have to be the judge on if I should have thrown the scraps in the bin or if the juice was worth the squeeze on this one. Also, if you make or have made cutting boards, look away now. This is going to be quick and dirty, not professional boards, crazy patterns, or something I would sell, but very functional, something I plan to use every day, and I didn't take that much time to build them. These are 4/4 cutoffs left over from a storage bed project. It's been hit or miss plane to about 7/8, and these sections are planed cleanly, which simplifies the build. I do have a small crack in one board, so I start off by filling that with glue and clamping, squeezing out some glue. I could just go smaller, but as long as I get enough glue in there, it will be fine. Type bond 3 for this work. All wood has pores and openings. They get filled in when finishing. Next, I start on a jig. As you can see from the intro, I have an idea of a somewhat unique integrated handle design. I'm going to use a router bit, but I need to set up a jig for my compact router. A router table would be simple, but I don't have one. Nothing a little ingenuity and scrap wood jig can't solve. The goal is to route out the end of the board for the handle. I make some measurements and make an L jig to clamp to the table and the board and then run my router along. I make a test pass with this approach. It works, but I must have missed the calculation by a little bit and didn't hit the center. This isn't a big deal. You could always cut both sides for it to be symmetrical, switch the board around. The problem is this jig approach just doesn't seem great. Lots of clamps, not much area where the board is clamped at 90 degrees as the router bit goes down and in, so I'm afraid of movement and the clamps prevent me from routing all the way to each side. While the test showed it would work, I abandoned the idea to build a router base jig. Makes sense, right? I get started laying out the base plate with this 1/2 inch MDO plywood scrap. I'm using a brad point drill bit for the large hole, then a regular drill bit for the center so it's countersunk. I didn't put a depth stop on my first cuts, and I didn't go quite deep enough with the brad point bit. I tried to fix this quick with the drill, and the bit grabbed and pulled all the way through. Trash. So I grabbed some more scrap to start over. Can you sense the wheels falling off the bus? Me neither, so I keep pushing on. Once I get the base plate made, I mount up and slowly lower the bit onto the plate to mark the center. This will allow me to properly install my guide, patting myself on the back for that one instead of guessing for the center of the hole. My confidence is quickly ruined when I drill the guide on the wrong side and ruin my second jig. Okay, third time's the charm. If you're still watching, I promise I do make something that works occasionally. This time I repeat the process and drill everything. I do run into a hiccup when the guide blocks 2 of the screws into the router base. I could redo the guide and drill different holes for the base, but I quickly rough cut out some access on my bandsaw to move forward and get the screws in. After all that, it's time to cut these grooves. I try and take small passes and it works. There is clearly a better direction to go depending on the wood grain. The router bit's cutting in both directions, so it's a little bit hard for me to tell. I kind of feel it out as I go, making small passes in the direction that it wants to chatter less. If you plan to copy this, drill a bigger hole in the base so that the collet is closer to the bit. But really, don't copy this. I could have made a router table by hand and it would have been much safer than what I did here. I learned how to do things better by trying it out. I also could have built a router base plate that extends to my workbench and clamps down, and that would have been better as well. Once I have the handles cut, I can now get the shape and effect I want. I create an arc, circumference, geometry, spreadsheets, arithmetic, I don't know. I made a curve using a string and a pencil. No math other than finding the center of the board and guessing what line makes a curve I like. Crushed it. Off to the bandsaw. I like it. This is the look I was going for. I replicate this on the larger board. The grooves on the larger board are edge grain, and that works better routing. I did run into an issue routing the outside. The groove was narrow enough that when I paused for a second it went in too deep since the bit was barely riding on the bearing. I kept my cool here and grabbed the orbital. With some more sanding, I can make a slightly better surface for the router bearing, sand the issue, and then reroute. I got it done. This Ryobi compact is a pain to get the depth right on a roundover. The depth has some variation, but it's all sandable. I really need to see if there's a better way to lock down the depth adjustment on this router. I hate sanding and I have to sand the grooves, but it's better than hand sanding the whole juice groove. I got my sanding and finishing instructions from my old man. He built many wooden boats and has also recently gotten into cutting boards. He said sand down to 150 grit, water pop, then 220 before a coat of oil a day for 2 to 3 days, and then wax a couple days later. Quick and dirty, right? But honestly, his come out crazy smooth, so let's give it a shot. I have this leftover Harbor Freight toolbox liner, so I'll sand on that to avoid marking up the board from here on out. For sandpaper, I'm always looking for the best value and really like the mesh options. I'm trying out the 3M Extract mesh since it's cheaper than Abranet. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a video on value sandpaper options. That's probably on my future video plan. Way too much water on my water pop, it's fine, everything is fine. Sandpaper works nicely, I like it. The 220 sand, I open up my vac hose to bleed off some suction to avoid sanding marks. The dust cart setup I have has a lot of suction. This 220 sandpaper seems really nice, and I don't think I would have had sanding marks either way, but just to be safe. I am using walrus oil and wax for these boards. The stuff is fairly expensive in small quantities, but I know it's good stuff to use for this application. I'll leave a link in the description for the oil and wax kit I bought, as well as other products used in this build. When I oil, I like to hit the end grain twice on the first coat since it will soak it all up. I did a pretty heavy first and second coat, a lighter third coat, and then one heavy coat of wax following the instructions. While I wrap this up, not every project needs to be a couple month-long social media build. It's fun to take a break and do some smaller projects. A crazy end grain walnut pattern board would be rewarding, but having something cheap and functional in a few days is also very rewarding. Don't worry about what other people are making, make what you want, and try to do a little better each time. These are going to get used regularly, and while they won't hold up as well as end grain, they will be easier on the knives. It's really a trade-off of sharpening knives versus maintaining or refinishing your cutting board. Thanks for sticking with me for this video. Please consider liking, subscribing, or checking out my dust extractor cart build next.